Hello students, and welcome to this fourth session on Bernard Shaw's Saint Joan. We are to discuss here the importance of the epilogue in the play Saint Joan. Why has this epilogue been added by Shaw at the end of the play? What is exactly the necessity and function of this epilogue being appended to the play? The significance of Joan's execution does not lie in its preeminence in physical pain, but in the fact that Joan was persecuted essentially as she would be persecuted today. So Shaw wants to impress upon us the fact that people like Joan, they were criticized, they were not tolerated in the past, and they were persecuted, and they would be persecuted today if present, and such people would always be persecuted, or they would always be criticized and not tolerated by people in future as well. So this is the point that he wants to emphasize upon through this epilogue. The epilogue must be understood as a device to project this idea on stage, as a means to foretell Joan's canonization as her triumph over her enemies. The epilogue could be considered superfluous because this has already been established through or towards the end of the trial scene. As some critics have suggested, at the end of the trial scene, Joan's victory is already effectively presented to the audience through the hysterics of the converted D'Stogumber, the conversation between Ladwenu and Warwick, the executioner's announcement that her heart would not burn, and Warwick's skepticism about whether he had really heard the last of her. So all these are enough reasons to establish the fact that Joan has not died. She would be ever remembered by people. She is alive in the hearts of the people. And she was an extraordinary person who could not be forgotten easily. Shaw, however, does not end the play here. He would not leave his audience plunged in horror. Instead, he presents to the audience the lessons of Joan's martyrdom. The epilogue in Saint Joan serves two major functions. The first one, it vindicates the sainthood and genius of Joan by summarizing her achievements. So her achievements have been summarized in this epilogue. And the second one, it brings out the loneliness and persecution of the saints even in our time. That how lonely, how alienated, how secluded a life is being led by saints even today. It is particularly in the epilogue that the success of a life's mission is clearly stated. She has made a man of the Dauphin. That is, these are her successes in her lifetime. He is now called Charles the Victorious, and actually he leads his army and wins battles. So he is the king now. Dunois likewise tells her, I have kept my word, the English are gone. Moreover, he admits that he succeeded in his battles because he fought the maid's way. D'Stogumber, on his part, found that the sufferings of Christ were not enough for him, and he is redeemed by a glimpse of the sufferings of the maid. And it is emphasized upon us that saint-like figures, they have like figures like the maid, that is Joan, or Christ, or be it any other saint. They have to suffer in this universe. They have to have their own shares of sufferings for the sake of humanity. With the announcement of Joan's canonization by the 20th century gentleman, the audience is able to view her achievements in the perspective of centuries. In sharp contrast to the antiphonal excommunication of Joan in the previous scene. That is, there is in the previous scene we have that there are uh, lots of two groups forming lots of people who are in a way dialoguing, communicating amongst themselves, one in favor of her and the other against her. So all her detractors, we see, all her critics, they kneel to her, they kneel down in front of her and confess their blunders in a litany of praise and worship. So this is what we see in the epilogue, that all ultimately agree to the point that she was a genius and she was a saint and she had suffered only for the sake of others. The visions of her statues vividly confirm Warwick's admission that her spirit conquered them and the executioner's statement that she is up and alive everywhere. So she is not dead, she is still alive, just like a saint. Further, in terms of Joan's political and religious ideas, we find that her fight was not in vain. Her ideas of nationalism and Protestantism, which were revolutionary in her day, have been widely accepted and are now among the commonplaces of the 20th century. And her claim, "I was not burnt for nothing, was I?" seems so very correct. That is, she had laid down her life, she was burnt for the sake of humanity, and certain changes have been brought about in the temperament of the people. So Joan's burning has not gone waste. There has been quite a change in the attitude of people, but still the comedy of Joan's victory over her enemies is not unmixed with the tragedy of her burning during her lifetime. When she offers to return back to this universe, all her worshippers, they leave her one by one. They do not want her to do so. Even the rascally English soldier must depart from the saint for a more pressing appointment in hell. There is thus but little comfort for future saints. The cynical pattern of their physical pain and only partial spiritual success continues. It needs to be emphasized that Shaw does not despair of man's ultimate redemption through the heroes. So he does believe in the fact that mankind is ultimately redeemed of its sins through these saintly figures, hero-like figures. But on Joan's canonization, Dunois's comment is important. "Half an hour to burn you, dear saint, and 4 centuries to find out the truth about you, to canonize you as a saint. It has taken 4 centuries for humanity to acknowledge you as a saint." So this is how the universe or the world works, and Shaw criticizes this fact. Joan's suffering is caused by the inordinate length of time and human race takes in finding out the truth about its saints and geniuses. Her last words touch on this theme of inordinate delay on the part of humanity. "O God, that madest this beautiful earth, when will it be ready to receive thy saints?" The earth, which is beautiful, is not yet ready to receive its saints. How long, O Lord, how long? Saints have been sent by God in order to redeem humanity, but still people of this world, they do not acknowledge them at first sight, or they do not readily accept their existence. How long would it take them to really receive them with pleasure? Joan does not say that the saints are not recognized by this beautiful earth, she means that the saints have to get burned in body, and even their message has to wait for centuries before the world becomes ready to receive it. So physical suffering is a must for these saintly figures, and even their message, the message that they want to convey, or the godly message that they carry with them, this message also has to wait for centuries in order to be well received by or acknowledged by the people of this world. The epilogue, Shaw also incorporates his analysis of why saints are burned and humanity can in the future, and how humanity can in the future avoid such blunders. So he makes an analysis of the reasons behind, or the reasons that make people in this world burn the saints, and how this can be avoided in future. As in his other works, as he has done in his earlier works, Shaw attributes such tragedies to our defective institutions. So he lays the blame on the defect, or the foundational defect in the very constitution of these institutions, and he blames these defective institutions for these blunders. The idealists and moralists, he believes, they are normally innocent people with good intentions who burn the Jones in the energy of their righteousness, because they seem to be abiding by the rules and regulations laid by these institutions, which are basically defective in their very constitution, and these need to be blamed. It is their zeal to preserve the status quo that ultimately causes more harm than good to society. This is what Shaw believes in. He believes that they want to preserve status quo, they want to retain stability in society, and they are always apprehensive of the fact that if the ideas of such geniuses they are promoted, then there would be certain chaotic states in society, and in order to avoid such disintegration, such chaotic state, they are abiding, or they abide by the rules and regulations laid down by these defective institutions, and this causes these blunders in society. How their bondage to the existing order binds the good people to truth is expressed by the penitent Cauchon, the Archbishop Warwick, and the Inquisitors when they worship Joan. That is, they are basically good people who want to be by the side of Joan, but because they are to follow the rules and regulations laid down by these institutions, they are voting against her, and ultimately they are seen worshipping Joan. So through these characters, Shaw wants to impress upon us the fact that they are basically good people, but they blunder because of their belief and affiliation towards these defective institutions, which are, or rather institutions which are defective in their very foundation, and that's why they blunder. In particular, Shaw exposes the absurdity of our legal trials and the justice administered by our courts and jails. So he is questioning the very legal system of ours. Society is wrong not only in sensing heresy in ideas which are actually progressive, but also in its method of punishing the heretic. That is, in establishing heresy and in punishing the heretic. In both these attitudes, society is to be blamed. By a remarkable irony, Shaw demonstrates how even when justice is done to Joan after 25 years of her burning, it is not done through a fair trial, but through falsehoods. Justice long delayed is at last triumphant, no doubt, but as Shaw states, through Ladvenu's long speech, it is through corruption and perjury. This compels the audience to the inevitable conclusion that as long as they support this absurd legal system, they cannot absolve themselves of the sin of burning the saints in their time. That is, saints would ever be burnt in this world unless and until we make certain changes, we bring about certain changes, we recreate, re energize our institutions. Shaw's treatment of Joan's chronicle serves essentially to persuade the audience to recognize society so that the human race can make a speedier evolutionary progress. So, in order that a speedy evolutionary progress is made in this world, the society should recognize, or rather, people should recognize society and what are the defects that are there in the institutions and how they can be mended in order that they are actually helpful in the progress of the human race.